Not that it mattered where it ended. Aaron wouldn't make it that far before she overtook him. Evidently, he realized it because he spun around to face her and reached under his cloak, grabbing for another weapon, she supposed. But she was wrong. He brought out the black bouquet itself. He'd carried volume to his meeting with Kesk. The dark goddess alone knew why. He heaved it away at right angles to the path. It thumped on the tiles and slid on down the steep pitch of the roof. Zephyrus leaped off the bridge and dashed after the black bouquet, intent on intercepting it before it slid over the edge. If the old crumbling book fell to the ground below, the impact could damage it severely. She dived for it at the last possible second, indifferent to the fact that by doing so, she was also flinging herself towards the drop-off. She grabbed the tome, somersaulting to the very brink, and stamped down hard. The action shattered clay tiles, countered her momentum, and kept it from tumbling her off the edge. She felt a swell of satisfaction which ended abruptly when she took a good look at her prize. Viewed up close, it was a little too small and didn't have a title embossed on the front cover. It wasn't the perfumer's formulary after all, just a decoy. Aaron had procured just the decoy Aaron had procured in case he needed a diversion. She spun around. The ridge walkway was clear. The thief had disappeared. But where? As before, Zephyrus could think of several possibilities, but she knew that at that point in Aaron's place, she would have tried to reach the ground as quickly as possible, which meant he'd bolted down the stairs. She could use them herself, but despite her skills, would waste precious seconds clambering back up the slanted roof. It would be far quicker to descend via the controlled plummet she'd learned during her training. She swung herself off the brick and dropped, grabbing at protrusions and depressions, the merest unevenness sometimes in the timber wall with its flanks white paint, with its flaking white paint. Many of these handholds could never have borne her full weight, but even so, the fleeting contacts served to slow her down a little. She landed in a snowy flurry of dislodged paint chips, executed a shoulder roll, and vaulted to her feet uninjured. The gable and valley configuration of the roof existed at street level as well, which was to say, the whole building was cross-shaped and positioned behind one of the projecting arms. She could no longer see the spiral steps. She dashed around the structure until she came into view. Her quarry didn't, assuming she correctly guessed his intentions. He already made it down to the teeming street where a good many humans, orcs, goblins, halflings, and gnomes were bustling around. She pivoted, peering into the crowd, and abruptly spotted a flash of copper in the bright, warm autumn sunlight. Aaron had pulled up his cowl to cover his red hair, but when he glanced back, no doubt checking to see if she was still on his tail, it didn't quite hide his goatee. The thief was striding towards a staircase that at first glance looked like it led down into someone's cellar, but which she suspected was actually an entrance to the underways. She didn't want him to reach the steps. He probably could elude her down in the tunnels. She couldn't hit him with a chakra, not with so many people milling around between them, but her magic might work. And at that point, she didn't care who saw. If anyone took exception to her actions, she'd deal with them. She gestured, and the shadow of a brown and white horse standing in the traces of a parked hay wagon lengthened the deformed into a tentacle, which then reared from the ground. The animal whined and shied, and people nearby cried out in alarm. Aaron turned, saw the length of the darkness lashing in his direction, and tried to dodge. He was quite quick enough. He wasn't quite quick enough. The tentacles spun around him and held him fast. He thrashed, struggled to squirm free. Agile as he was, with that skinny frame, he might actually do it, but it wouldn't save him. By the time Cephres would have closed to striking distance, she raced forward, broadsword in hand. A gray blade scrambled out of the crowd to bar her path. With his slender frame, ivory skin, and vivid green eyes, he looked as if he might possess some elf blood. "Hold it," he said. "I saw you." Ka! Cephres drove her stiffened fingers at the half-elf's solar plexus. He had excellent reflexes. He jumped back in time and brought his round targeted shield up to block. His sword leaped in a head cut. She shifted in so close that the stroke fell harmless behind her. Zephyrus rammed the heel of the palm into his jaw, snapped his neck, and raced on towards Aaron. Mattingly, a second gray blade, middle-aged, stocky, and entirely human, lunged at her. Apparently, he'd been hurrying towards Aaron and the tentacle, but had spied his partner's fate and turned back around to avenge him. His sword point staked at her face. He sought to deflect. She sought to deflect it with a press, and avoiding the block, it dipped down to threaten her midsection. She had to retreat a step and twist at the hips to keep it from piercing her guts. She gave him a roundhouse kick to the knee. Bone snapped and he fell down. She stamped on his chest, breaking ribs and rupturing his heart. She ran on. People scurried to get out of her way, which afforded her a good view of the conjured tentacle. It writhed and shifted from side to side, clenched and unclenching, clenching and unclenching. Its coils empty. The gray blades had delayed her long enough for Aaron to wriggle free. She dashed down the steps into the underways, cast uselessly about, chose a direction at random, and sprinted that way. After she passed a couple intersections, she realized further pursuit was futile. The thief had escaped her for the time being, but not forever. She'd eavesdropped on Aaron's conversation with Kes and was convinced that the Tannerite was right about his fellow rogue. The redhead thief would keep on trying to liberate his father. That meant she'd had another chance to catch him. And surely he could be so lucky twice in a row. Mary woke feeling sore, yet drowsily content. Judging from the warm covers and the medicinal smells, her comrades had carried her to the healer's tent, and she was going to be alright. She could feel it. And in any case, the important thing was that she hadn't disgraced herself. Standing behind the bramble barricades with the senior rangers and their allies waiting for her first battle to begin, she'd been frightened she wouldn't be able to bear it, that she'd throw down her bow and run away. And when the enemy, orcs, ogres, and huge shapeless, crawling masses of mold appeared among the trees, it was as terrifying as she'd imagined. But somehow she'd stood her ground, losing arrow after arrow until the foe overran her position. Then frantically hacking with her broadsword, she cut down 2 orcs, turning and saw an ogre swinging its club at her. The world went dark. Evidently, her side had won the fight, otherwise she wouldn't be lying in a clean, soft bed. She realized her throat was dry, opened her eyes fully, and looked around to see if one of the priests had left her some water. She wasn't in a tent, but a small, sparsely furnished candle lit. She wasn't in a tent, but a small, sparse, furnished candlelight room with bare whitewashed walls. A thin young man with a red beard sat watching her. The sight of him made her snatch for the sword that no longer hung on her side, even as it pierced her confusion. It was an ogre that had wounded you, that happened years ago in the Winterwood. No, it wasn't an ogre that had wounded her. That happened years ago in the Winterwood. It was a collapsed balcony in Weevil, after which what? Had Aaron Sar Randall found her and decided to make her his prisoner? As if by magic, a long, heavy fighting knife appeared in the thief's hands. Calm down, he said. I don't mean to hurt you. If I had, I wouldn't have carried you to Ilmatar's house for healing. She sneered and replied, Yet you pull a dagger on me, even though I'm injured and unarmed. According to the healer who attended you, you're only a little bit hurt at this point. He smiled crookedly and added, Besides, this afternoon I found out just how tough an unarmed Outlander woman could be. You met Cephras. I did if she shaves her head and moves like, I don't know what, a cat, lightning, flower, water, whatever you like to say. It was scary. That's her. Who in the nine hells is she? How do you know her? How do you? What happened? I'm the one with the knife, said Aaron, so I'm going to ask the questions. She glanced surreptitiously. She glanced surreptitiously around. Her weapons were nowhere in evidence, nor was there anything much she could grab and use for self-defense. Even the pewter candlestick was out of reach. Still, perhaps, her plight wasn't all that desperate. If this truly is a house of healing, she said, all I need to do is shout, and someone will rush to my aid. Faster than I can stick an Arthan fang between your ribs, he countered. Don't count on it. Are you ruthless enough? I didn't see it in your eyes. He sighed like a man with a headache and said, I already said I don't want to do it. I'm just hoping you can tell me something to help me get my father back." She felt a reluctant twinge of sympathy for him. She remembered how it had felt to lose her own parents when the white fever took them both within a 10-day of one another. "I saw a gang of ruffians march him away with a sack over his head," she said. "One of them was a tannerup." "Right, the Red Axes. I know who kidnapped him. But did you overhear them say anything exactly where in the house they're holding him, or how he's restrained or guarded? Anything like that?" "No, I'm sorry. Curse it. Really. I don't even know what I thought you might be able to tell me. But I prayed there'd be something. What were you doing in my garret?" "Looking for you in the strong box. You can say the Black Banquet. I know what I've got, sort of." Were you up there questioning my father when the Red Axes showed up?" "No," Mary replied. "Cephres and I were just approaching the tower when the Red Axes and your father came out." His eyes narrowed. "Then you," he said, "this Cephres woman and Kesh are all working together?" "No, I mean, Cephres and I aren't on the same side anymore." "It's complicated," Mary answered. She blinked when she absorbed the implications of what he'd just said. "Are you telling me Cephres just joined forces with the Red Axes?" He frowned, considering, then said, "I assumed so at the time, but now that you ask, I guess I can't be absolutely sure. Anyway, I told you I'll ask questions, and I think we're going to have to start at the beginning and go step by step for me to make sense of the answers. What is the Black Bouquet?" "A perfume maker's cookbook. I know that much, but what makes it so valuable? A secret message hidden somewhere inside?" She hesitated, then decided that since he knew so much already, it wouldn't hurt to tell him. In the course of interrogating her, he was likely to reveal things that she wished to know as well. "No," she said, "it's just a formulary. But the formulary of Corinne Dosser." Aaron looked blank. Until I got involved in this affair, Marie admitted. I'd never heard of him either. But evidently he's famous. If you care about perfume. In fact, he was the most famous perfumer who ever lived. His concoctions were magical, but they might as well have been, for they delighted anyone who got a whiff. These days, when some lucky soul discovers an unopened bottle, it sells for thousands of gold pieces, because nobody knows how to make any anymore. Right, Corinne never took on an apprentice or taught anybody else his secrets, and the Black Bouquet disappeared mysteriously at the time of his death. That was 300 years ago, and everyone thought the book lost forever. Recently, however, the Ormeth on the Shining Plains, Lord Quin's agents uncovered and destroyed the Temple of Shar. They found the Black Bouquet with the rest of the cult's treasures. And it's truly valuable, Aaron said. Plainly, the thief was still trying to wrap his head around the idea that anyone cared so much about perfume. Mary had the same reaction when she first heard the story. I'm no merchant, thank the Forest Queen, but I'm told if the right person used the book to set up a perfume manufactory, he'd probably wind up as rich as a prince, the ranger continued. Anyway, Ormeth has had its problems recently. It had a coup with 3 bad harvests in a row, fend off raiders, and fight an actual war with its neighbors. For that reason and others, Lord Puin was more interested in selling the book and turning a profit quickly than going into the perfume trade himself. He put out the word that he had it, and a rich merchant here in Weeble arranged to buy it. Aaron finished for her. Which one? That I can't tell you. He scowled and said, Ranger, threats won't move me. Come at me if you want, and we'll find out if an unarmed scout of the Red Heart Guild can defeat a common culpers wavering a knife. Oh, calm down, said Aaron. Maybe it doesn't matter who wanted it, or maybe we'll come back to that point later. For now, go on with your story. At the buyer's insistence, she continued with a nod. The negotiations were conducted in secret. Lord Puin dickering with the merchant's factor in Ormeth. Finally, they struck a deal. The buyer made a down payment, the balance due when he took delivery of the book. Puin undertook to get the volume to Weeble. Since that too was supposed to happen secretly, he didn't want to use his own troops to move it. Instead, he applied to my guild for an experienced guide, me, and I in turn hired a company of mercenaries. In addition, Puin's court wizard cast spells to cast spells of warding on Strongbook and Saddlebag, intending to hold the banquet, or Bouquet, intending to hold Bouquet. Mary sighed and added, "You know the rest of the story better than I do. The sellsword and I carried the formulary all the way here, and you stole it mere minutes before I could hand it over, because plainly the expedition wasn't a secret. How did you know we were coming?" "Only because Kess hired me to steal the coffer. My guess is he knew because somebody asked him to get it. Kesk's power to be Casks a power to be reckoned with here in Weevil, but I doubt he has spies in faraway cities, though he might have one in a rich man's household here in town. I take it he's the most dangerous scoundrel hereabouts." Aaron shrugged and said, "One of them. I'm surprised you dared defy him. He held back information that might have kept my friends alive," Aaron replied. "It made me angry, though why I turned on him, then saved you who actually killed Dahl and Gavis with your own hands is a puzzle. I killed them in a fair fight you outlaws started. Does that make them any less dead? No, and if you feel the need to avenge them, come ahead. Maybe we'll get to that," Aaron said. "Tell me about Cephas. What did you know about the followers? What do you know about the followers of Shar?" Aaron frowned and replied, "Just what everybody knows. They're vicious, mad, and worship an evil goddess. I don't know a great deal more myself, but I have heard of a cult within the cult, or that watches over the main cult, something like that. They're called the Monks of the Dark Moon. They learn a special, highly effective style of fighting. Cephas claims to be one of them, and I believe her. Evidently, her order sent her here to recover the treasure Huin plundered from their goddess." Aaron cocked his head and asked, "So, what were you doing wandering around with her?" Mary felt her face grow warm. "At first," she said, "I didn't know who she was. She tricked me into accepting her as my comrade. For some reason, she must have thought she'd have better luck getting her hands on the bouquet if we hunted it together. In the end, she turned on me because I wouldn't agree to help her take your father from the Red Axes and hold him hostage ourselves. That was when she told me who she really is. We fought until your balcony collapsed beneath us. She managed to scramble off, but I didn't. It's a miracle I'm not dead." "You didn't fall all the way to the ground," said Aaron. You landed on a rain span part way down. If Cephres wanted to take the book back to the cult, and Kest wants it for some other reason, how could they work together? I don't know. You're fairly certain they are? I palavered with Kest today. Cephres stalked me when I left and tried to capture me. How did she know to find me there unless the pig-faced bastard told her? If she tried to catch you, you were lucky. If she tried to catch you, you were lucky to get away. As lucky as I am to still be alive. I realized that the first time she threw a spell at me, it didn't take. But I felt a kind of tinkle in my head. I glanced around and spotted a woman standing in a wriggling blot of shadow or twilight in the middle of the sunshine. It only lasted a second. If I'd looked a heartbeat later, I wouldn't have seen anything funny. Might have decided the tickle was just my imagination and not known. I was in danger until it was too late. Mary stared at him and asked, Cephres threw a spell? Yes. You didn't even know she was. Yes. No, Mary stared at him and asked, Cephres? Mary stared at him and asked, Cephres threw a spell? Yes. You didn't even know she was a sorceress. Shadow of Mask? You are thick. She didn't cast any spells when we were together. Magic must be a secret weapon she likes to hold in reserve. Maybe. I assume Kest offered a ransom. I assume Kest offered to ransom your father for the formulator, Mary asked. Yes. Are you going to do it? I don't see how I can. I figure that if I tried, he'd play me false, seize the book, take me prisoner, and kill both my father and me. He's like that, mean, treacherous, and vengeful. But I wasn't sure of it, so I arranged a meeting in Slurvane's sword to fill him out. After what happened, I'm positive I can't trust him. Though maybe if I'm clever enough, I can set up the exchange in such a way that he has no choice but to keep his word. You sound doubtful, Mary said. As well you should. She decided she was tired of sitting up in bed like an invalid. So she pushed back the covers and swung her bare feet to the floor. Someone had dressed her in a white linen shift sufficient for modesty. Why don't we do the sensible thing, she asked. He arched an eyebrow. Go to the authorities. She continued and report that the Red Axes abducted your father. If you have the kind of reputation I suspect, they might not take your word for it. But the Red Heart Guild is known for far and wide as an honorable fraternity, and I'll back you up. I won't even tell them you're the thief who committed the outrage in the paradigm and escaped to tell the tale. And in exchange for my help and forbearance, you'll return the Black Banquet, or Bouquet, the Black Bouquet. Aaron chuckled grimly and said, I don't think so. Why not? First off, I have to trust you. And all I know about you is that you killed my friends and stood and watched as the Red Axes kidnapped a sick old man. I didn't think honorable rangers were supposed to behave like that. The barb evoked a rush of shame in Mary, which she did herself best to hide. I've seen 100 cruel and depraved acts since I came to this cesspool of a city, the ranger said. I couldn't interfere with all of them. Anyway, who are you, a miserable thief, to lecture me on my duty? She shrugged and said, nobody, obviously, in your eyes. Anyway, there are other reasons I don't want to go to the Grey Blades. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are in Kesk's pay, or beholden to the person who hired him to get the book. Even if they're not, they're leery of the Red Axes as the gang is of them. They wouldn't want to break into Kesk's stronghold just on our say-so. They do know I'm an outlaw, even if they've never been able to hang anything on me. And while your guild may be known the world over as honest and true, you're still an outlander, which means you don't count for much. The rightful owner of the book does. If I convince him to speak up, it's still not a sure thing. Look, my father was a notable robber in his time. The law hasn't forgotten, and it doesn't love him either. But let's say we can convince the Greyblades to raid Kesk's mansion. Do you think they'd find my father alive? Hal surely has secret rooms and sits on the river to be. So the only answer is to out-trick Kesk, Mary asked, and his henchman, this Ancephorus, I imagine. In that case, let me help you, and when your father is saved, you'll return the Black Bouquet to me. Right, Aaron said with a snort. And as soon as I turn my back, you knock me over the head, tie me up, and torture the location of the book out of me, or hand me over to the law and let them do it. I swear by the horn blade that I wouldn't. Oh well, that changes everything. Mary felt a certain anger and quashed it as best she could. In his world, perhaps, it wasn't a deadly insult to doubt the sanctity of another person's oath. Look, she said, neither you nor I are a match for Cephas and the Red Axes by ourselves. But if we work together, we might have a chance. Frowning, he thought it over for a moment. At the end, he said, when I turn over the book, I want a reward. We're talking about your father's life. Even so, the thief replied, think of it as Wargill for my friends. All right, I can arrange it. Where are my clothes and weapons? Your clothes and armor are in the chest at the foot of your bed. We'll have to buy you a new sword and bow.